If you have the scheduler module, there are a few things that you'll need to set up. First off, you're going to need to add your technicians to the schedule itself. So if we just take a quick look here at the schedule, you can see I have a number of technicians on the schedule for a number of different types of employees. So all those are set up in your employee file. So if you go to admin and employees, this is where the setup would be. Now there is a separate tutorial all about setting up your employees, so I'm not going to cover everything here. But the things that are key for having the employees show up on the scheduler are this. Down here for the employee type, you have to select tech. Now you can select multiple employees by going on employee type, and you can have them be as many different types of employees as you want. As long as one of those types is a technician, they will be on the schedule. And then for the tech type, you have to pick whether they're auto, flat, both, estimator, or other. And once you have that set, that's the main things that you need to have set for them to show up on the schedule. Now, there are a number of configuration settings that you can set up, so let's take a look at those. If we go under admin and configuration and go down to the S's, we'll start with the schedule options, and most of the things that we'll want to set up are in the schedule options here. Now there are two different ways that you can set up your schedule, and you can set them up differently for shop jobs versus mobile jobs, or you can set them up the same. And the two different methods are sequence or time. Sequence means you're just putting the jobs in the order that you're going to be doing them that day. So whatever job's going to be the first job is first in the schedule, and so on. Time, you would actually have a timeline and you would put the job in the time frame that you want it. Now here I have it set differently between shop and mobile, so I can show you the difference. So if we open up the schedule here, right now I have the view set to both, and you can see that in the top right corner. And whenever you have it set to both, if you have them split, it has to use one or the other, so it's always going to use time. So you can see we have a timeline along the top of our schedule. However, if I switch it here to mobile, which was set to sequence, you can see that I just have different slots there, and I would just place them in the order that I wanted them. All right, going back to our configuration here. Next, you'll see the show unassigned jobs separately. And I'm going to kind of skip over that for just a minute. We'll just go down to the next few things that are pretty self-explanatory there, and that's the first scheduled time, last scheduled time. So that's when on the schedule you want the to be able to put in your first job and how late you could put in the last job. And then you can check mark either allow Saturdays or allow Sundays if you're open on either of those 2 days. Now, getting back to the show unassigned jobs. We're going to kind of skip out of here for just a second and look at a different option. So if we go down to the scheduler auto add jobs to schedule, this is kind of what that feature has to do with. This is another feature, and it's just an on or an off. So in order to better explain that, let's go ahead and just take a look at the point of sale screen here. And you can see on the job tab, we have a field there for preference date. So if I'm creating a ticket here, and I am not going to schedule the job right at this moment, but I know that I need to have this job done on a certain date, I can put in a preference date. And then based on the auto add setting there, if that's turned on, it will add this job to the schedule on this preferred date. If that's turned off, then the date will be in that window, but the job will not show up on the schedule anywhere. So if we have that on, then the next thing we want to see is whether or not how we have that show up on our schedule. So again, we'll go back here to the schedule options. So this can be on or off. So with it turned on, so we're showing unassigned jobs separately. Let's see what that looks like. So again, I'm going to pull my scheduler back up. And you can see on the schedule here, let me just kind of make that a little smaller. The top portion, how it says unassigned jobs, and then there's a list there. So any job where I had put a preference date in and had not yet put on the schedule, it will just put it in that top window there under the unassigned jobs. And it will only show up in that unassigned jobs box on the actual date that I put in. So if I switch to a different date and I have jobs that haven't been assigned on that date, but I put in that preference date, they would show up in that window. Now, if go back here and if we turn this off by unchecking it, and we say we don't want to show the unassigned jobs separately. Now when I go into the scheduler, we don't have that box at the top, but what we do have is two additional texts. Under auto, we have an unassigned auto, and under flat, the unassigned flat. And so it basically does the same thing. As long as that auto add feature is turned on, whatever date that I had put in for the preference date on that job, we would then see that job added to either unassigned auto or unassigned flat, depending on what type of job it was. And it would just be put into the earliest possible slot that it could be put into. All right, now let's go to our schedule sequence times. And basically what this allows us to do is for each sequence, if you're using the sequence option, we can put a label on there. So you can see I've got the first one labeled morning, but then the next one I put in 8 to 12. And then after that I went back to just having it morning or afternoon. So again, if we go back here, you can see in that first slot how it says morning. The next slot or second sequence, it shows the 8 to 12. Then the third one, it goes back to morning. Now the fourth one is blank. If you have the same title in several of them, only the first one will show, and then all the additional ones after that will just be blank until there's a different title. So you can see how you can put different labels on there even if you're using sequencing. Okay, let's go back here. Schedule status. Each time you put a job on the schedule, it'll initially set the status of that job to new. And new is a special status. You can't really make any changes to the new status. However, any of the other statuses we have there, you can edit those by highlighting the text and typing in new text. You can also change the color. So when we see there where it says waiting for parts, how it's orange, when I add a ticket on the scheduler, and if I have it set to that status, that job is going to show up in orange. So I can go here and click on it, and if I click on bar color down here, I can pick what color I want that to actually be. And then I can also change the color of the text that I use for that. And then if you want to add a new status or additional statuses, in the code field, it can be a number or a letter. It just has to be unique. It cannot be the same as any of the other codes. And then in the description, I would just type in whatever I want it to say. And then again, I can choose the color that I want for that particular status. And then I can also change the text color on that status. We already covered the auto add jobs. The enable drag today, if that's turned on, if I have a job on the schedule, I can actually grab that job and drag it across the schedule till it goes to the next day, and I can drop it in on the next day. If that's not turned on, then I can only drag the job within the day that it's on. And then open a new window for scheduler. Basically, with that turned on, if I already have the schedule open and I click on the schedule button here, it would open a separate schedule window. So most of the time you'll probably not want that turned on. You would just want it to go back to the same schedule window if you already have it open. Those are the different setup features for the scheduler. Once you have all of those set the way you want, then you're ready to move on into the tutorial explaining how to actually use the scheduler itself.